This has been the tradition in sports. When you have a star this big that people are jealous of, and people are...
As the game continued to unfold, the tension that had been simmering between players began to resurface in dramatic fashion. For Caitlin Clark, the night represented an opportunity to respond to the physical play and confrontational moments that had surrounded her in previous matchups. Earlier in the season, several opponents had been accused by fans of attempting to disrupt Clark's rhythm with aggressive defensive tactics. One of the most widely discussed incidents involved Diggins-Smith Carrington, whose physical defense against Clark had sparked heated conversations across the basketball world. That history made every interaction between the players feel significant. During one tense sequence in the game, Carrington became involved in another moment of physical contact while guarding Clark. The play escalated quickly as players from both teams rushed toward the action. In the chaos that followed, another Minnesota Lynx player collided with Carrington, sending her down to the floor. The arena erupted immediately. Crowds tend to react strongly when physical confrontations break out, and this moment was no exception. Fans stood, commentators began analyzing the play in real time, and cameras replayed the sequence from multiple angles. For many viewers who had followed the earlier controversy, the moment felt symbolic. It appeared as though the same aggressive style that had been used against Clark earlier in the season had suddenly turned back against the players who had been applying that pressure. Momentum in basketball often shifts dramatically after emotional plays like this. One moment can energize one team while simultaneously rattling the other. That seemed to be exactly what happened here. The Indiana Fever began playing with renewed confidence, pushing the pace and attacking on offense. Meanwhile, frustration appeared to spread across the opposing side of the court. Moments like these are part of what makes professional basketball so unpredictable. A single collision, a heated exchange, or an emotional reaction can change the entire tone of a game. And for fans watching the rivalry between Clark and her critics unfold, the sequence added yet another dramatic chapter to a storyline that had already captured the attention of the entire basketball community.
Clark needs to fight back. You know what would happen if she fought back in a real way? Caitlin Clark is not a punk, but she's also smart enough to know it would lead to a collapse.
As the intensity continued building, the emotional atmosphere surrounding the game became impossible to ignore. Players from the Connecticut Sun, who had previously been associated with some of the most physical moments involving Caitlin Clark, suddenly found themselves facing the same type of pressure they had once applied. For many observers, the shift in energy felt almost ironic. Earlier matchups had featured aggressive defensive tactics aimed at slowing Clark down. But when the roles appeared to reverse, some of those same players seemed visibly uncomfortable dealing with the heightened intensity. One of the most notable reactions came from Diggins-Smith Carrington. During one sequence after the earlier collision, Carrington appeared extremely frustrated and close to losing her composure. Her body language suggested she was still processing the chaotic moment that had just taken place. Teammates quickly moved toward her, placing hands on her shoulders and guiding her away from the confrontation. Their goal was clearly to prevent the situation from escalating further. Scenes like this are common in professional sports, especially in emotionally charged games where rivalries and previous incidents add extra pressure to every play. Meanwhile, fans watching the events unfold online began framing the situation in a very specific way. Many described it as a form of poetic justice, believing that the players who had once targeted Clark with aggressive tactics were now experiencing the same intensity from the other side. Clark herself remained largely removed from the drama at that moment, focusing on the game rather than engaging in the confrontation. That calm approach became another talking point among fans who admired her ability to stay composed despite the chaotic environment. In the end, the sequence highlighted how quickly emotions can swing during professional basketball games and how narratives surrounding rivalries can shape the way fans interpret every moment on the court.
I get sad when I talk about this a little bit in that we're still not talking about basketball.
No.
We're still not allowed to be focused on for our basketball play.
As the dust settled after the emotional sequences and physical confrontations, the game began to take on a different tone. What had started as a tense matchup filled with lingering grudges slowly transformed into a reminder of how quickly the momentum of sports can shift. For fans watching closely, the night seemed to represent more than just a single contest between two teams. It felt like the closing chapter of a storyline that had been building for weeks around Caitlin Clark and the players who had previously clashed with her on the court. Throughout the season, Clark had found herself at the center of intense defensive pressure. Opponents frequently targeted her with aggressive strategies designed to disrupt her rhythm and test her composure. For a rookie entering the WNBA, that level of attention is rarely easy to handle. Yet Clark's response has consistently been the same: focus on the game, maintain her composure, and allow her performance to speak louder than any confrontation. That approach became especially evident during this matchup. While other players allowed frustration to show through visible reactions and emotional outbursts, Clark remained largely focused on executing the game plan. She continued directing plays, setting up teammates, and taking advantage of the openings that appeared as the opposing defense began losing its structure. Meanwhile, the emotional energy on the other side of the court seemed to grow heavier as the game progressed. Players who had earlier tried to apply pressure now appeared increasingly distracted by the events that had unfolded. Moments of hesitation began creeping into their decision-making, and that subtle shift often makes a huge difference in high-level basketball. The crowd sensed it as well. Every successful possession by Clark's team generated louder cheers from the stands. Each replay of the earlier collisions sparked fresh discussions among commentators and fans online. Social media quickly filled with clips from the game, turning individual moments into viral highlights that spread across basketball communities within minutes. By the time the final stages of the game approached, the narrative surrounding the matchup had already taken shape. Many supporters described the night as a form of long-awaited vindication for Clark after weeks of physical challenges and controversial moments on the court. Others saw it simply as the natural unpredictability of sports, where aggressive strategies sometimes create the very situations that lead to a team's downfall. Either way, the game reinforced one undeniable reality about Clark's presence in the league. Whenever she steps onto the court, the atmosphere changes. Fans watch more closely, media outlets analyze every play, and even routine matchups suddenly feel like major events. For the Indiana Fever, the performance served as another sign that their young star continues to grow stronger under pressure. The challenges she faces from opposing defenses are not disappearing anytime soon. If anything, they may intensify as rivals look for ways to slow down one of the most talked about players in women's basketball. But nights like this demonstrate something important. Adversity in sports doesn't always end with arguments or retaliation. Sometimes the most powerful response is simply continuing to compete at the highest level, letting the scoreboard and the performance tell the story. And if this matchup proved anything, it's that the story surrounding Caitlin Clark is far from finished. In fact, moments like these are only adding new chapters to a career that the entire basketball world is still watching very closely.
Hey man, your meal ticket is under constant attack. There's been dirty plays all season. And again, I've admitted, some of them have been exaggerated. It's just typical rough play with girls. But there are some that it's just been dirty. And Dejanay is one of these people that has a real problem with.
The aftermath of the collision left Marina Mabrey visibly shaken. Cameras captured her clutching her face while sitting on the court, clearly experiencing both physical pain and emotional frustration. For viewers who had grown accustomed to seeing Mabrey as an aggressive, fearless competitor, the moment revealed a different side of her personality. Her cries and expressions of discomfort showed vulnerability that fans rarely witness from professional athletes during heated games. In many ways, the scene became one of the most emotionally charged moments of the night. Mabrey had built a reputation as a player who constantly pushed the limits of competitive intensity. She was known for challenging opponents physically and mentally, often walking the fine line between relentless determination and controversial aggression. But in this moment, the narrative shifted. Instead of being the aggressor, she appeared as the one suffering the consequences of a chaotic and overly physical sequence. For spectators watching in the arena and at home, the scene carried symbolic weight. Some fans interpreted the moment as a turning point, a reminder that aggressive tactics can sometimes lead to unintended outcomes. Others simply saw it as an unfortunate incident that highlighted how dangerous high-intensity competition can become. Regardless of perspective, the moment left a strong impression on everyone watching. It served as a powerful illustration of how quickly the dynamics of a basketball game can change, and how the emotional stakes of competition can affect even the toughest athletes on the court.
People fighting tooth and nail the entire season, not wanting it to be this way because other people weren't getting flowers, or she was getting too much attention, or she gets a special whistle, or I'm gonna check her off the ball here.
Aggressive play has always been a defining characteristic of high-level basketball. Coaches often encourage physical defense, intense pressure, and relentless competitiveness because those qualities can disrupt opponents and create advantages on the court. However, there is always a delicate balance between strong defense and actions that cross into unsportsmanlike territory. Throughout the season, certain players had faced criticism for pushing that boundary too far. One of the most discussed figures in that debate had been Dejanay Carrington, whose defensive style had drawn mixed reactions from fans and analysts alike. Supporters argued that her physicality was simply part of elite competition. Critics, however, believed that some of her actions went beyond normal defensive intensity. Those debates reached their peak during a controversial moment involving Caitlin Clark, when a particularly aggressive play sparked widespread discussion across sports media. Eventually, the growing tension seemed to culminate in a dramatic sequence during a matchup with the Minnesota Lynx. During that game, Carrington was involved in a hard fall after colliding with a Lynx player while attempting to defend a play. The moment looked painful, and the reaction from the crowd was immediate. For many fans watching the replay, the incident symbolized how quickly aggressive tactics can backfire in professional sports. The same intensity that fuels competitive success can also create dangerous situations when emotions run too high. That moment served as a reminder that physical play must always be balanced with awareness and sportsmanship.